Hello friends, I welcome you all to Nandip Academy for UPSC and MPSC. In this online session with dealing with the Hindu, we are going to see these four parts of this online session. In the first section, we will see analysis of the editorial. We will also see definition of important terms that are used in the article. There will be a discussion of important concepts related to the article. And apart from all this, we will also see vocabulary and we will see the meaning and the parts of speech of the various words that are used in the article. So let's begin with the first article. The first article that we would be discussing is dated 26th January 2021 of the Hindu, and we will begin with the vocabulary. The first word is overzealous, which is an adjective. It means having too much energy or enthusiastic about something. The second word is betray or betrays, which is a verb which means to expose or to expose somebody to danger by giving information to the enemy. The next word is cow down, which is a noun which means to frighten someone into doing something by threatening. The next word is prurient, which is an adjective which means having excessive interest in sexual matters of others. The next word is defamation, which is a noun, the action which means the action of damaging the good reputation of someone. The next word is rumor mongering, which is a noun and it defines a person who spreads rumors or wrong information. Let's read the article and find out what is there in the article. The Bihar police circular on social media posts reveals low tolerance for criticism. So this is an article titled Overzealous Threat, and it is talking about the action of the Bihar government, wherein they are not accepting or they have taken all the necessary action so as to punish anybody who would put up critical or criticism messages on social media. This article is about that. So let's read the article. The warning by the Bihar police of legal action being taken against users of social media for offensive posts targeting the government, its ministers, and officials betrays both hypersensitivity and ignorance of the law. So, in the very first line, we are told about what the entire article is. So, the police's action is going to be wrong, is going to be turned illegal. It is also being termed as ignorance of the law because they are not aware that when a person is allowed to express his or her opinion. Now, the Bihar government is going to punish anybody, is going to take action for against persons if a person is going to target the government, its ministers, or its officials, and the people are going to use the social media platform for targeting the government or its ministers. Strict action will be taken against them by the Bihar police. It represents an unacceptable combination of low tolerance for criticism and a zeal to cut down the public. So, this action of the Bihar government not only does it show that it is not open to criticism, but it also shows that it is going to take action against the public. It is going to bend the public down. It is going to put the public in a environment of threat. The Economic Offences Wing, which also deals with cybercrime, has sent a circular to the department secretaries that they could inform the wing about such offensive posts so that it could act against them, terming such actions as against prescribed law. Now, first, before explaining these lines, I would like you to know that the Economic Offences Wing is a wing that deals mostly with frauds, having economic or financial capabilities or financial meanings. Some of them are unlike economic frauds are dealt with by the economic offences wings. So also frauds on online jobs or frauds in online cooperative institutions are dealt with by the economic offences wing. Now, the Economic Offences Wing of Bihar, apart from dealing with cybercrime, it has actually sent a notice to all the government secretaries, departmental secretaries, that if there are any messages on the social media which are targeting them, their officers, their government, they could actually inform the Economic Offences Wing, and action will be taken against such people who are putting offensive posts. Presumably, the action contemplated is for an alleged cybercrime. Even though the letter from the Inspector General of Police concerned makes no mention of any specific penal provision, it is a possible reference to the Section 66A of the Information Technology Act, as there is no other section that deals with offensive remarks. Now we need to know two things out here, that the Inspector General of Police has sent a letter, but nowhere in this letter has it been mentioned that an action will be taken against the public for posting for posting anything against the government. The second thing that we need to know here is that it is just an indication, it is a possible hint that under what section is action going to be taken against people for offensive posts about the government, its ministers, or its officials on the social media. It will be under Section 66A of the Information Technology Act. This is what is going to be put into action. So before reading the article, let's understand three things. The first is the government in Bihar. The government in Bihar is headed by the Chief Minister Nitish Kumar. We also need to know that he belongs to the National Democratic Alliance, and this is the ruling party which is headed by the Chief Minister Nitish Kumar. The economic offences wing, as I stated earlier, it is a wing that deals with economic offences, or it deals with transactions and online transactions where financial concerns or matters are involved. Now we need to understand Section 66A of the Information Technology Act. So let's see, what is the Information Technology Act. The Information Technology Act of 2000 is an act of the Indian Parliament notified on 17th October 2000. It is a law that deals with cybercrime and electronic commerce. What is Section 66A? Section 66 is related to computer related offenses, and if any person dishonestly or fraudulently does any act, he shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term of up to 3 years or a fine. So this is Section 66A. There are two words which are important here, that is dishonesty and fraudulently, and of course computer related, or we can say online. And it appears that Bihar government is going to put Section 66A of the Information Technology Act when it is going to punish people for their for making comments against the government using social media. Let's read the remaining article. So, Section 66A, which dealt with punishment for sending offensive messages through Communication Act, etc., was struck down by the Supreme Court in 2015 as being too broadly defined. So, we can also see that this part of the Section 66 was actually struck down by the Supreme Court. The Act's remaining penal provisions pertain only to other offences: sending obscene or prurient messages, hacking, stealing computer resources, identity theft, personation, and violation of privacy. So these under Section 66, no, under the Information Technology Act, a person can be punished if the person is found involved in any of these things. There is nothing specific in the law that would render strong, even offensive, and intemperate criticism of the government a cyber offense. If a person is to be booked, or if a person is to be punished under the Information Technology Act 2000, then that person has to commit a cyber offense. But saying or expressing something against the government cannot constitute a cyber crime. So the question that arises is, how is the government, the Bihar police, going to punish somebody under the provisions of the Information Technology Act if it does not constitute a cyber offense? The tenor of the warnings suggests that the cybercrime wing may initiate proceedings against those who post offensive messages. So the entire article is about this, that there would be punishment for those who are going to post offensive messages on the social media, and these offensive messages, if they are against the government, the ministers, or the officials. However, it ought to be remembered that the police cannot register FIR for defamation, as the offense can only be dealt with by the way of criminal complaints before magistrates and cannot be the subject of police investigation. A very important point that needs to be discussed is that if a case of defamation is registered against a person, or if there is a a accusation of defamation against a person, this cannot be a part of police investigation. The police cannot investigate a matter of defamation. This has to be dealt by the way of criminal complaints, and it can be dealt only before a magistrate. Again, the question arises is, if there is a defamation against a particular minister or against the government, this can not be a part of the duty of the Bihar police. The government indeed has the power to institute criminal defamation cases through public prosecutors if the alleged defamation is in respect of official duties of public servants, but such measures do not exactly shore up a regime's popularity. Now, what are the defamation cases which can be taken up by the government? The government can take up those defamation cases if it is related to the official duties of public servants, and then in such a case, public prosecutors can be appointed for dealing with such alleged defamation. In response to criticism, the state government has clarified that the proposed action would only be against rumor mongering and insulting language. So, when about asked about how the government is going to punish somebody for offensive messages, the government has responded by saying that only action would be taken only in two cases, that is, in case of rumor mongering and in case of insulting language. The RJD leader Tejaswini Yadav has reacted by daring the government to jail him for exposing its wrongdoing. As you all know, the ruling party is the National Democratic Alliance, which is led by Nitish Kumar. The opposing, that is Rashtriya Janata Dal leader Tejaswini Yadav, has actually challenged the government by asking the government to punish him or to jail him because he has exposed its wrongdoing. The Chief Minister Nitish Kumar has not helped his cause by claiming that the government's good work is not reaching the people because of criticism on social media. There is much on social media that can be seen as crimes, hate speech, inflammatory and insulting remarks, or defamation, but it ill behoves an elected government to take note of these unless the offenders are influential enough to cause major social divisions and foment violence. So now there is a contradictory claim which is made by Nitish Kumar that there are many good policies, there are many government's good work is not reaching people. On the other hand, the government has also asked the Bihar police to take action against those people who are defaming the government. So these are two contradictory things. The government would do well not to act on the police circular, lest it be seen as an attempt to suppress its critics and those who make allegations of corruptions. So the best way for the Bihar government would be to not act on the police circular wherein it is going to punish people for making offensive statements or make against the government or its ministers. That would be the best way for the Bihar government to act in such a situation. That is all about the first article. Let's move on to the second article, beginning with the vocabulary. This article is called Split in the Middle. So let's first discuss the vocabulary. The first word is bodes ill. Bodes ill, it means to foretell or to announce something beforehand, before it has actually occurred. The next word is fractious. Fractious is an adjective which means to divide into small parts. The next word is limbo. Limbo is a noun which means an uncertain period of waiting. Tacit is the next word, which is an adjective. It means understood or implied without being stated. The next word is echelons. Echelons is a noun which means a level or rank in an organization or a profession. The next word is chaos, which is a noun which means disorder. Let's read the article and understand what it states. This article is about the chaos, the split, and the uncertainty that is prevailing in the political arena of Nepal, the neighboring Himalayan country. As you are all aware that Mr. Oli has dissolved the parliament, has dissolved, and this decision of dissolving has been taken in a hurry, and he has not consulted. He has not followed the process that is to be followed in such a situation, and there is a split in the party. So this is the article is talking about the split. Oli's authoritarian style bodes ill for the fledgling democracy in Nepal. As you all know, that Nepal has a very young democracy, and if this style, if this authoritarian style of Mr. Oli is going to continue, it is going to have a very unpredictable future for Nepal. The political crisis triggered by Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli's decision to dissolve Nepal's parliament and call fresh elections led to a vertical split in the ruling party, with the rival faction led by Pushpa Kamal Dahal or Prachda sacking Mr. Oli from its general membership. So, as you are all aware, that Oli has decided to split Nepal's parliament, has decided to dissolve Nepal's parliament, and because of this, there is a split in the ruling party, and there are two factions of the Nepal Communist Party. The faction which has left the ruling party is led by Pushpa Kamal Daha, also called as Prachda. No, and what has Prachda done? Prachda has actually uh, removed Mr. Oli from its general membership. The Prachanda faction of the Nepal Communist Party has removed Mr. Oli as the party's chairman earlier. So, two actions that have been taken by Prachanda. The first is it's removing Mr. Oli from his general membership. The second action is of removing Mr. Oli as the party's chairman. So, two major actions that have been taken against Mr. Oli. It has issued a notice to him seeking an explanation for his decision to recommend Parliament's dissolution, to which he did not respond. When Mr. Oli was asked why did he dissolve the Parliament, he did not respond to this. Following this, the Central Committee of the Prachanda bloc met on Sunday and decided to expel Mr. Oli. So, because there was no answer from Mr. Oli's side about why he dissolved the parliament, therefore this faction of Mr. of this faction of the Nepal Communist Party led by Prachanda has decided to remove him from his general membership and also to remove him from the party's chairmanship. His aides have rejected this, saying that the leader remains the prime minister. This is not acceptable to his supporters. This puts Nepal and its fractious communist movement in limbo, and because of this, there is a chaos in the political arena of Nepal. There are already two factions of the Nepal Communist Party, and it's now as it appears that it is going to be leaderless. Mr. Oli has claimed that he represents the party, while Mr. Prachanda and Madhav Kumar Nepal, a former Prime Minister and leader of Mr. Oli's erstwhile Communist Party of Nepal, have ruled out any future compromise with the Prime Minister. Now, there are three important people that we need to understand. The first one is Prachanda, about whom I've already discussed. He is the leader of the rival faction that has actually divided. Over which the party has been divided. That is the first person we need to know. The second person we need to know is Madhav Kumar Nepal, who's also with Prachanda. He is a former prime minister and he's also a leader of the Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninist. The third person is Mr. Oli, of course, who is the prime minister and who had the chairmanship of the Communist Party of Nepal. So these are the three important people we need to know. Apart from this, we also need to understand which are the parties in Nepal and what is the UML and what is the Marxist Maoist Center. So first is the Nepal Communist Party, also called the NCP. It is the ruling party in Nepal. It is formed from the unification of leftist parties, that is the Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninist, also called as UML, and the Communist Party of Nepal, Maoist Center. So, the Communist Party of Nepal, or the NCP, has been formed by unification of these two parties. The constitutional validity of the decision to dissolve the parliament is being reviewed by the Supreme Court also. Now, the Supreme Court has also come into picture, and it is thinking over the fact of the Prime Minister's decision to dissolve the parliament. Also, the Election Commission will decide which faction could retain the party's name and the symbol, the sun. Now, two important constitutional machineries will be playing an important role here. First is that of the Supreme Court of Nepal, which is going to decide, which is going to ponder over whether the action of dissolving the parliament by Prachanda was constitutional valid. That is the first thing. The second is the Election Commission is going to take a very important decision, and this decision is going to matter, and it's going to decide the fate of the two parties. And the decision that the Election Commission would take is which party which rival faction, now that the Communist Party of Nepal has been divided into two factions. One is led by Mr. Oli, one is led by Prachanda. So which of the rival faction, which of these two factions is going to retain the communist, which is going to retain the party's name, that is the NCP, and which party is also going to use its symbol, the sun. These decisions will have a lasting impact on which side would side would emerge stronger. So, depending upon the election commission's decision and which party is going to use these two things, that party would emerge stronger. Mr. Oli was elected Prime Minister in February 2008 after his Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist Leninist, fought the 2017 general elections in an alliance with the Maoists. Within months of coming to power, the CPN-UML and the Maoist Center of Prachda merged to form the Nepal Communist Party, or the NCP, which gave him nearly two-thirds of the majority in the parliament. Now again, we need to understand what happened in 2018. In 2018, the CPN, that is Unified Marxist Leninist, and the CP and the Maoist Center of Prachda, both of them came together to form the Nepal Communist Party, and this party had two-third majority in the parliament, which is a big C. But the pre election unity did not last long. When the government was formed, the tacit understanding between the Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist Leninists, and the Maoists was that Mr. Oli and Mr. Prachda would share 5-year term. So there was an understanding between the parties, between the alliance, that the 5-year term would be shared by Mr. Oli and Mr. Prachda. But because of the authoritarian style of Mr. Oli and because of the greed of Mr. Oli for power, he was not willing to share the power, or he was not willing to share the post of the prime ministership with Mr. Prachda. When the government was formed, I'm sorry, but Mr. Oli refused to step down after 2.5 years, pushing the NCP into a bitter intra-party feud. And as I said, Mr. Oli, he refused to hand over the power after 2.5 years, as was agreed to um, to Prachda, and because of which this rift was born. The widening rift was not along the former UML Maoist ideological lines. Rather, Mr. Oli's authoritarian style of governance and refusal to share power led to an erosion of support for the Prime Minister in the top applicants of the ruling party. It is because of Mr. Oli's nature, it is because of Mr. Oli's greed for power that he lost support and respect in the top party positions of the ruling party. To overcome his own weakness within the party and to deny his rivals power, he dissolved the parliament. Not only did he disagree to step down from the post of the prime minister, and after 2.5 years, and hand it over to Prachda as was agreed upon, he also took the decision to dissolve the parliament without any consultations. It is a typical case of greed for power and personality clashes triumphing over the greater interests of a party, a government, or the nation. So, here what is observed is greed for power, and the authoritarian style form of Mr. Oli became more important than his party, than his government, than his nation. When they formed a united front, it was a historic opportunity for Nepal's otherwise divided Communist Party to script a brighter future for the fledgling republican democracy. See, in the other side of the, if we see, look at the other side of the coin, this was a very good opportunity for Mr. Oli and his Communist Party to give Nepal a bright future, which was to give Nepal a future wherein people could trust. But that did not happen. But in 3 years, Nepal is in chaos. Parliament has been dissolved, the PM has been sacked from the ruling party, and the party is split down in the middle. But already adding to the woes of the pandemic in Nepal is this political chaos. Mr. Oli cannot escape responsibility for the crisis cannot escape responsibility for the crisis Nepal is in today. If there is any one person who is to blame for the Nepal crisis, then it has to be Mr. Oli and his greed for power and his authoritarian style. If Mr. Oli would have looked at all this situation as an opportunity, probably Nepal would have had a brighter future, but Mr. Oli has not made that possible. So that is all about the second article. See you in the next online session with a new article. Thank you.